David a very long time ago, well over 2 decades ago, when we were much younger. And Labour was in government, and he was in the GLA at the time, but he was only there for a short time because, you know, before we knew it, he had gone on to win his seat. So after, sadly, the death of Bernie Grant, who we all missed, was a great inspiration to so many in our country, so many of us who've gone into politics. David went into Parliament in 2001, and he's always been a good friend to me throughout my career. And when he became a minister in higher education, a higher education minister, I was working for the Young Foundation, starting up charities to help young people. And when I went around Whitehall, even with the Labour government, it was really hard to explain to officials who got the important, it was really hard for officials to take on board what we were dealing with: racism, discrimination, unemployment for young people. And I nearly gave up, and then I went to David and said, you know, this is just, you know, why can't we make this happen? Why can't we fund things that help young people get jobs? And David went and spoke to his officials, and fast forward, we set up a charity called Uprising. We worked with thousands of young people, continue to work with them in this community and up and down the country. It's one of his legacies as a minister, because he managed to persuade his officials to take seriously what we were doing, which meant that thousands of young people across the country, including here in the East End of London, have gone on to do amazing jobs. It's one of many of his legacies as a minister. Then in opposition, of course, he's a fantastic campaigner. He's campaigned against racism, the Windrush campaign, the Grenfell campaign. You've heard about the impact of the fire in our constituency. That's a fight we've got to keep fighting. And he's, of course, now the Shadow Foreign Secretary, and I'm delighted that he's here tonight. There's a lot going on, and our thoughts are with the people of Ukraine right now, and all the others who are affected by conflict across the world. This is a really important portfolio. And of course, if we can hold on to our councils and win more councils this year, up and down the country, then we've got a fighting chance of forming a government, a Labour government, and seeing David Lammy next Foreign Secretary, and seeing Labour shadow government ministers become ministers, so that we can make a difference to people's lives, like we did when Labour was last in government, in education, in housing, in healthcare, and much else. And working with the council, so the councils are properly funded, because we've put up a £200 million worth of funding cuts in this borough alone. So we need your help, not only to win this council back, because the pathway to power starts with local election victories. It starts with making sure every council in the country, up and down the country, we may not be able to win every council, but we should aim to win every council up and down the country, so that we can form a majority and win in the next general election. So thank you all for what you're doing, and it's a great pleasure to invite my great friend, David Lammy, the Shadow Foreign Secretary.
So very kind. What Rashanara did say is that we actually met before I became Minister for Higher Education. Rashanara was working at a think tank. She spotted talent, and she asked me to put together, it was quite a big pamphlet, it was really my first book, and I'm forever grateful for that permission. This beautiful, young, Bangladeshi lead researcher, and look at her, all these years later, still beautiful, young, and one of the brightest and most intellectual members of Parliament. We really value Rashanara, great friend. And let me just say about John Biggs. I first met John Biggs, I think it was 23 years ago. In those days, I looked a lot like Denzel Washington. And John looked a lot like Brad Pitt. And Tony Blair had arrived in government, and he decided that London needed a mayor and an assembly. the bill had gone through Parliament, and the process in the Labour Party was that you had to go round different constituency parties to seek their nominations. And I thought, well, I'm going to put myself forward, young Denzel Washington David Lammy, I'm going to put my name forward to be on the London Assembly. And Tower Hamlets was one of the first constituencies that you had to come to. Little did I know, in the depths of London, a younger John Pitts, in those days, but also thought that he would put his name forward and come to Tower Hamlets to get the nomination. We turned up in the hall. John was ahead of me. I grew up in Tottenham. Tottenham's a long way from Tower Hamlets. I had been down this end of town because my godmother lives in Stepney Green, but I hadn't spent, I love Stepney. But the nomination contest was not in Stepney Green, so I did not know where I was going. But John spotted me. He knew that I was going to run and try and get the nomination. And I am so grateful that John took my hand, he guided me into a side room, and I think he tried to lock the room. But no, I went on to get the nomination here in this borough. I'm so grateful that you were responsible for giving me my start in politics. And I've been very, very pleased to come back here year after year. And I remember knocking on doors with Rush and I and John. It was 2015. We were fighting hard after a tough period, and we won. And it's wonderful, wonderful to be back here again. And let me just say, as I walked in, all of these people, I could smell the food. I was handed a drink. I thought, where am I? Am I in number 10? This feels like a party. I'm at a Labour fundraiser, but it reminds us also of what we are up against and why working class people need Labour in power. And that is a serious issue. As you are working class, I never dreamed, and it's one of the reasons why Rush and I have been dear friends for many years, because we both grew up working class kids. Working class kids who went to normal state schools, worked hard, had some encouragement to work with pushing. I actually had free school meals for a period, and I think of those young people in this London borough and in mine and so many others, and we are absolutely fighting for them at a tough time. They need a Labour council to believe and invest in council housing, as you have heard. They need a Labour council in this era of austerity to ease the blows. They need a Labour council because we know that so much investment in policing and other areas was stripped out from this government. We've got huge crime and huge concern. We've got to support those mothers and fathers and those kids that are struggling and can be seduced by crime. And you know, one of the records that this borough has is some fantastic, outstanding schools. Be under no doubt that does not happen by accident. It happens because in working class kids. So it's so important that John is returned, that we are united, and we go out and fight. And by the way, let's just get back to what we're up against. These people that I watch opposite us as I sit, I'm now sitting on the front bench, looking at my opponents on the other side. I think it was a few months ago, just before Christmas, there was a photo of Michael Gove nightclub. He was at a nightclub in Aberdeen on his own, dancing at this nightclub. I thought this is very interesting. We have a cabinet minister, Michael Gove, dancing on his own in Aberdeen at a nightclub. What you need to know, my friends, is Michael Gove grew up in Aberdeen and he has no friends. He was on his own. These are one of the people we're up against. We have this woman, Priti Patel, in the Home Office. This country is a country that was sanctuary to 90,000 Ugandan Asians and gave them refuge. When I was growing up in North London, we gave 11,000 Cypriots refuge after the troubles in Cyprus. I went to secondary school, we had 10,000, not at my secondary school, it was 10,000 Vietnamese boat people that came over. And here we are, in the midst of what is happening in Ukraine, people, the children and mothers, and Priti Patel has come up with a system. You know what they call the system? Because it's the same system, it's the same system that hurt the Windrush generation. You know what it's called? It's called a hostile environment. And this is a hostile environment for women and children fleeing war. And what did Boris say? We have to have the forms. We have to have the biometric tests, the complications of the salary and all the rest. Why? Because we're worried that they could be spies. Since when have our children no taller than John Biggs spies? This is insane. And that is the kind of government that we are up against. When we say one East End, we really mean one. And when we look at conflict, and we know in this room, as we stand in solidarity with our Ukrainian brothers and sisters, we also know in our movement that there is conflict all over the world. Conflict, at this time we keep in our minds the people of Afghanistan who are starving this winter. At this time we keep in our minds the people of Yemen who have been so forgotten over these years. At this time we keep in our mind conflicts all over the world, including in the occupied territories in Palestine. So we remember all of those at this time. We stand for solidarity and we stand for peace, and we believe in democracy. We believe in those values. We want to support those people, and we stand in opposition to some of the populism that we've seen in this country. It's been wonderful to watch the World Cup together, wonderful to watch the European Union and us stand and come together. But you do think how silly it was to undermine human rights in our own country, eroding Parliament, undermining human rights, having rows with the French. These are serious times and we need serious leaders. We certainly need Boris Johnson out. So look, remember, as you're knocking on doors and fighting here in Tower Hamlets, remember that the Labour Party, the party that my father always said when I was growing up, always vote Labour. Always. There are times when you don't agree with all of them. There are times when they go off in a funny direction. If I'm telling you something, always vote Labour. And, you know, how long was the Labour Party in power in the 20th century? We've forgotten. I'll tell you how long it was in power in the 20th century. It was in power for just 22 years. The age of Russian hour. 22 years. And in those 22 years, we got the National Health Service, we got the minimum wage, we got legal aid, we got the Open University, we got peace in Northern Ireland, we got Sure Start, the list goes on, and we just had 22 years. 22 years. Our job in the 21st century is to make sure the Labour Party gets a lot more. And you here to make sure, and I say this as the MP for Tottenham, which is another area of London that has its controversies, is to make sure that Tower Hamlets, as a Labour authority, is a beacon that our young people can be proud of. This is not a time for division. This is not a time for factionalism. This is not a time for egos. This is a time to hang together. And it's, you know, it's a time to keep in mind, and my God, why we should win. One simple reason. I'll leave you with this one simple thought. April the 30th. On April the 30th, people's wages and salaries will fall into their bank accounts. And guess what? Under this government, their salaries would have gone down. Why? Because taxes are going up. And the next thing that happens on April the 30th is that the energy bill comes in, and guess what? It goes up, the cap has come off. And what is this government offering you? A loan. With all of those billions Rishi Sunak has, and I'm not talking about the government, I'm talking about his own. He's offering the British people a loan. So, my God, if we can't win the Labour the week after, people in this constituency really feel the pinch in their pocket, then what is Labour about here in Tower Hamlets? My friends, we have a lot to fight for. We have a lot to stand up for. We have to keep in mind ordinary people in so many of those estates across this borough. And we fight to see John Biggs and all these wonderful, wonderful people selected. And I feel the buzz in here, I feel the energy in here. It makes me think, maybe I should spend a little more time with my godmother instead. For all of those reasons, I urge you to be motivated, to keep the energy, and to fight for them. Thank you so much.
It's a bit like Doctor Who, one goes off the stage, another one comes on. I'm the latest one. That's probably not quite true. I've lived in this borough for about 42 years now, which is longer than some of you have been alive. And we've got 3 deputy mayors. Asper Bacon, who spoke first of all. She hadn't been born when I was first moved into the borough. When I was first elected, I think that was the same year that she was born. And Rachel Blake, who maybe is not here this evening, but she's the other deputy mayor. She was born about the year I came into town. It's Martin Wisman, who was the 3rd deputy mayor. He's really, really old. And I think he was just about going to secondary school when I got here. The point I'm making is that we're a party which spans the generations, which spans our community, which is a diverse party, I'm really proud of the work that all of my cabinet members and councillors and activists have been doing year in, year out against this terrible Tory government, against the divisive politics that can sometimes take over in town hamlets. I'm really proud that David's come here this evening. David's a sort of old mate of mine in political terms. We have a number of things in common. We're sitting all together. We both support Tottenham Hotspur, who are, of course, yes, the finest team in the UK, although occasionally they don't win every game. I don't know why that is. Maybe there's a metaphor, a bit like the Labour Party. We're pretty bloody good, but we don't always win. So what do we need to do? We need good captains, we need good leaders, we need good troops, we need good activists. We can get stuff done. Now, Rushnara, who as we just have, is only 22 years old. She's been an MP since she was at primary school, I think. But there's something that all the speakers here this evening have in common, which is we're all pretty ordinary people. We're obviously all talented people, particularly me, particularly Rushnara, particularly David, particularly Aspect, particularly Ulmesh. We're talented people, and Ulmesh has been around the world that way. Ulmesh is one of those pioneers of anti-racist campaigning in this area. Really proud to count Ulmesh as a friend. He was involved in something called the Newer Monitoring Project before people even heard of it, I think, and they did some really strong pioneering work in Newark to challenge bad behaviour by the police, which sometimes happens, to challenge institutional racism, to challenge the discrimination against people, to challenge violence on our streets. Those things we still need to do. So we're a great team. But I was going to make a point as well, which is, you know, we're all pretty talented people, obviously, and you lot are as well. But we only exist in power because we have a platform. That platform is the Labour Party. The Labour Party was born in many places, but one of those places of birth was Townhouse. And there's some real heroes on our shoulders we sit here in the East End. And some of them, by the way, in our room, we've got Abdul Aziz Sadar here, who's sitting next to us. We've got Chilling here as well. We have Halal Abbas, Samuel Between. We get in trouble for not spotting people now, but we have many people, we have many councillors from Siraj who's looking sullenly in the wrong direction. But we have many people. We have Danny Hassel, who's only about 40 years old, but he's already standing down after 2 terms on the council. He's offered real leadership. He's a youngster. He's inspiring. But the point I'm making, I guess, is that we have people who've made massive sacrifices in their lives, to their relationships, their employability, to their evenings. They have kids who've never seen them because they spent their lives at meetings fighting for a cause. Why do they do it? Because we believe we can make the world a better place. And I know you're here as well because you want to make the world a better place. We made history in the East End in the past, and we can make it again in the future through our efforts, through our leadership. By the way, I should have brought it with me. I think we had a campaign in 1994, which I was involved in, where we invented hedge card. Hedge card was such a brilliant idea that everyone else copied it. I'm sure David's using the top one as well. And the basic thing, how do we get our message across? How do we avoid cynicism? How do we make sure that people are on our side? As Asper Begum, who is one of my heroes, even though she was born after I was first elected, she already announced some of the things that we've done. 2,000 council homes. We haven't built all of them, we bought some of them, we borrowed some of them, we haven't quite stolen any of them. But we want to do more than that. We have 20,000 people on our waiting list, and we need to provide people with homes. Free school meals, as we said, all our primary school kids, regardless of their family background, have a free school meal. It makes a massive difference to have a full belly in the middle of the day. I remember my free school meals, and they made a difference. We have our council tax reduction scheme, paying people's council tax that they are too poor to handle. A lot of councils expect you to pay a big chunk of their council tax. We don't do that with people on low incomes because we know that this is becoming an expensive borough. It used to be a really cheap place to live. It's now becoming more and more expensive. It's squeezing people out. It's even happening in parts of Tottenham. It's becoming somewhat gentrified. How do we provide opportunities for people on low incomes? What's the basic answer? We need a Labour government. We need to build the stepping stones for that, as David has said, as Rushnara has said, as others have said, by building our platform of local government, by building our confidence amongst ourselves, by building our relationship with our neighbours, by evangelising to people on our streets, by working on the school gates, by getting those messages across, we can make it clear to people what difference we can make. And we can do it through our examples of leadership. We pay for extra police, we have declared a climate emergency, We rescued our grant system from the mess it was left in by the previous guy. I'm not here to talk about him. That divisive politics is somewhere that we need to make sure we don't. We've managed to hang on to a lot of our services against enormous cuts. Our idea stores, our libraries, our gymnasiums, our leisure centres, we're rebuilding them. We have a massive capital programme. We defeated the government on the West Ring Kidworth side. A man called, what was his name? Jenrick. Fucking little so it wasn't he came down and he thought he was above the law. He was like a sort of medieval baron. He said, you know, even his mate at the Daily Express, they said we're all Marxists here, we need to rip them off. They need to make their profits. We defeated them in the courts. They wanted to build a monstrosity, crush the spirit of our community. We stopped them doing that. I won't go on much longer, except to say, well, there's a few other things. So, Asma, what she got? Asma Begum, hiding behind a pillar. Yeah. So Asma led our Black and Minority Ethnic Inequalities Commission. That's a real big deal. It's about talking